Hey everybody, Johnny5 Alive here, and welcome back to another Park Beyond video. If you haven't watched my video where I launch hundreds of coasters over a canyon, links are down in the description below. This video is specifically for the making of said coaster. I'm going to show you guys the whole process, how I did it. It was a 5-hour build, and we're speeding things up here today, and I'm just going to be talking over the whole build as we go, and it will go back to normal speed once in a while so that we can ride and test the coaster. And in fact, in the 5 hours of building this, I only had to test the coaster 8 times to get it just right. So there's a little bit of background footage of what this came to be. Let's get right on into the speed build. Okay, so I have a couple various speeds here. When I'm doing the terraforming, we're going to be going at 20 times speed because my camera's pretty still and I'm just ripping through the terrain. It's much more satisfying to watch at a fast speed like this. And then when we start building the coaster, we'll be going down to a 10 times speed. And then obviously when we ride the coaster or test the coaster, we're going to be going at a normal speed. And this is so I can get a 5-hour build down to about 30 minutes. So you get to see the whole build, what I'm doing, and I'm just going to explain what I'm doing and why. So the original concept was to get a coaster to launch over a canyon. So I didn't really know how I was going to do that. If you guys saw, I did previously a crazy coaster that split up 4 times and then did go over a ramp, and that's what inspired this whole project. And I did it by doing what you're seeing here. It lands, it forks, and then it forks again. That way you're dividing the 10 trains up into 4. But the problem with this is it was crashing. As you can see here, it's getting right through the cannon and just exploding, basically. So it has too much speed to get split. However, you do need at least, I think, 110 miles per hour to get over the maximum jump. And obviously, I want the maximum jump because I want this thing to go over a canyon. So I found that the sweet spot was 130 miles per hour. So the cannon length, you stretch it out until it hits 130. The game crashed there. That's why you saw it dip to black for a second, and I lost all my progress. I guess I lost the autosave. So, but this time I at least knew what I was going for. I knew what to do. I knew that it needed to be 130 miles per hour. I got the spacing a little bit nicer, and the best way to approach this is to space it far apart and then bring the nodes in together closer after. And you see me adjusting. That's because I'm trying to see how tight I can get them together without it crashing. And that seemed to be the sweet spot there for me. I was curious to know, like, you can add multiple trains in this game, which is cool. You can actually turn a roller coaster into a transport ride. And I was trying to figure out how to get multiple trains onto one coaster, because in other games you can do that with, you know, block sections, break sections, and that sort of thing. And I couldn't figure out how to add more trains because I just wanted it to just non-stop shoot coasters over the canyon. So I thought maybe adding a second boarding station would allow me to get a second train. That was not the case. I still to this day do not know how to get a second train. Probably something I'll figure out in the future. And when I do figure it out, we'll have more fun shooting thousands of trains over coasters again, or doing something crazy with it. So here, all the coasters are landing at once and they're converging at once, but you don't want them to crash. So what I did here is I made it so one half goes a little bit further out. There's a bit of a kink, a jank. That means it has to go out and around, which means it has a longer time to travel than the other ones. That means the first half of the trains will get to the merger quicker. That means the 4 trains will get to the merger, then the back half of the train, and then we can re-merge the train. Now I'm shooting the cannon back to the other side because I didn't want to run the coaster through because I want it to jump the canyon back. I'm gonna have like basically a kind of a double canyon thing. So here I knew it's coming in too hot. So we can actually test it here. This is perfect. So yeah, we shoot across. That would be the initial little area, and then this would end up being the canyon, and then we land here, and then we're merging, and all the merging worked perfectly. So I know that this mechanic worked, and then we got to get back to the station. So it's one cannon straight over the whole area, landing here, and this entire big half pipe here is all a brake section. Trying to trim down that speed back into the station, and it was trimmed just enough. So I knew that it worked. I knew that I had the speeds right. I knew I had the distance right. That's the max distance for the jump. You need 130 miles per hour. Here I was trying to set up a boarding entrance and an exit. Originally, I didn't know whether or not I was going to have guests on this, but I always wanted to have the option to have guests on this. And in fact, the final version, which is that I've presented, it is rideable from the guests, and I could have pathed it in and let the guests on. However, when the guests are getting on, it breaks all the there's no synchronized button in this game, and that is a huge letdown to me. I hope it's something that they add in later. But one thing you can do, I set this to be a splitting track and I think it was like a transport track. I don't know. There's a couple options that you could add to the hooks. And basically I made it so it's family friendly, teen friendly, and adult friendly. That way I could get the max amount of guests on this thing and everybody wants to ride it. So that was kind of cool. I found this duplicate feature and it's extremely handy. So after I was happy with it and I knew the guests would ride it, I just decided, hey, let's duplicate this thing, because why rebuild it when we could just duplicate it? I'm having some issues, though. It's kind of janky. It's not really that good. It tries to reset the orientation every time you change something, and the cannons get screwed up. So whenever you duplicate a coaster, the cannons just go berserk and they bug out. But I knew my cannon had to be 130 miles per hour, so I knew how long the distance needed to be. And pretty much everything, I just had to readjust the cannons, shoot it back into the boarding station. So I wanted the splitting coasters to kind of crisscross. So the first one goes to the left, the second one goes to the right, and the next one goes to the left, and then the next one goes to the right. Now, while I said this is hundreds of coasters, technically it's a 10-train coaster splitting up into... It's technically 40 coasters plus the 10 on the main one. So it's 50 coaster trains in total, but they shoot across 3 times. So in total, 150 coasters cross my canyon. So, I mean, if you want to get technical about it, it's only 50 coasters, but they go across 3 times. So yeah, I do get hundreds of coasters over this canyon, but it's on 50 times 3. But you know, I wanted to go more. I was going to go right to the edge of the map, and I crashed the game. So I just kind of went with this many, and this seems to be the amount where the game doesn't just start to implode. And if you guys watch the first video, the actual presentation of this, you'll notice that like the sound and the lag kicks in when these things are going across. You do any more than that, and it already crashes my game half the time when I ride it. So yeah, you do any more than this, it's going to crash every single time. So ideally, I would have liked to get to that actual 100 and then have them go across 3 times and have 300 coaster jumps in total. So, you know, that was the goal, but the game wouldn't let me. So I'm still marketing it as 100 coasters because, yeah, hundreds of coasters cross the canyon. So here I'm just trying to get like a main coaster in now. It might be a little bit on the fast side. My apologies. The camera's kind of going a little bit crazy. But I did shoot a cannon right underneath all of those. And now I'm just trying to like go somewhere else. So here we're going to do some terraforming. And we're at 20 times speed. I wanted to make a kind of like a swamp and fill it with water, and then have like the coaster turn into a water coaster. This is the most frustrating thing I've ever done, and this is why I put it at 20 times speed. I could not figure out why the water would not go in here. The water just does not want to go in there. And I was like, is it too low? Is it too deep? Like, what's going on here? I can get it over there just a little bit. Like, I can't even recreate the original lake that was there from the developers, and it was extremely frustrating. So I tried filling it all in and like, okay, can I just make a small lake? And I was like, oh, I got the small lake to work. Okay, well, can I fix these areas that I somehow screwed up? And I managed to fix all that. The problem is anytime you paint it or anytime you move terrain, that if anything even touches the water, it just disappears on you. and that makes it extremely frustrating to do. This was probably the most painstakingly thing that I had to do in this whole process. And I'm thinking like maybe I got to rough it up a little bit, maybe it's too smooth. And then I have ultimately went with 2 smaller lakes, and that worked. So I think there's a max capacity of what you can do with water, and it doesn't really tell you what that is. So I'm painting it in, getting it super muddy. I'm going to make it look like swampy-ish. And I didn't want to spend too much time on this because it was just mainly to serve one purpose, and it was taking too long. So I was like, you know, this will have to do. I wanted to put like a little pride rock here with a lion, but there was no lion, so I put a buffalo, and just the very little amount of theming I could do. I was thinking about actually turning this into like, you know, a Grand Canyon, getting the red rock in there, but I realized that was going to be too much work for very little payoff. So this is the water skipper coaster, and it was great. I was water skipping across this whole thing until it broke later. Kind of unfortunate, but yeah, I wanted to wave race across this whole thing. I brought the coaster track up because in the case that I wanted to get the guests to ride this coaster, I wanted them to be able to go under the track. So it is all set up for the guests to ride it. And I suppose I could open it up and see what it's like with the guests on there. But the sinks are going to be all off. They're going to start going because the guests are unloading, loading up, and there's no way to like synchronize the stations. So hopefully that's a feature they add later on. But we're going to have to test it to see. Yeah, this is the test here. I love how the moss went onto the coaster too. Made the coaster look like it's been there for like thousands of years and like moss is growing on it. Unfortunately, when you reload your game, there it is, it's working. When you reload your game, it repaints the coaster to how it was originally. But it was like all muddy and grassy, and I love the way it looked while I was testing it. So yeah, it's skipping along. It turns into a boat. And I was loving this, and somehow it borks out when you lose your water and you have to replace your water. It'll replace the boats with the little balls, the traveling balls. So it's a little bit unfortunate. One thing I did forget to mention at the top of the video when I was making the whole contraption of splitting them, it was going so fast I didn't really get to explain the splitters, so I kind of want to do that now. But I wanted to see if the second run would work here, and it was going too soon. So it was like I had to buy more time. It was too soon or too late, but the coaster wasn't arriving at the time that I wanted to. But talking more on the splitters, if you're wondering how I split the coasters back in, splitting them apart is easy because by default it's set to split. But there is a button in the game, if you look when you're putting the splitter down, to rejoin. There's a splitter and a joiner. So yeah, if you're clicking on this video because you're like, oh, I want to learn how to split coasters, I might not have explained that very well. So I just wanted to add that in there just as an FYI. There is like a little tab that you have to look for to rejoin the coasters. But for the most part, launching the coasters is pretty self-explanatory. Everything you guys saw me do was pretty self-explanatory. I just want to take you through the process of getting all this done here. So yeah, I was loving the boat ride experience. I was really happy about this, and I want to definitely do more water coasters in the future. Love to do some sort of wave race. One thing I really want to play around with in the future is going from water to ramp. So we have like coasters going over the canyon now. Let's see if I got the timing right now. See, yeah, we were arriving too late. So if we're arriving too late, that means I have to make my coaster shorter so that it gets there sooner. So I just made the water trip, brought all the edges in, brought it in, and that should mean it gets there just a little bit sooner. And then I also made the swamp ride just a little bit shorter. And then here we go, one final test to see if I got it right. But yeah, going to back my previous thought, where the coasters are jumping over the canyon here, I would like them to go from water to water ramp into the air and do tricks, kind of like Wave Race 64 from N64. Really cool game. You get to hit ramps, you get to go through jumps, and it'd be fun to actually do like a water circuit where you're putting like buoys on the water, little nodes on the water, and then the coaster's going in between all the nodes. And then you can also do the split track So the coaster, it's basically a bunch of little ski-doos, right? Because when you have a 10 train long coaster, it's like a big snake. But if you break it up into like little, like all those in the sky, they look like little jet skis. So it's just perfect. You break the coaster up, you split it up, then they can just race around the water doing different things, taking the circuit quite differently from one another, and then hitting jumps and doing tricks, and all just on the water. So that's an idea I have for the future. I'd love to do that. I don't know if I'll be able to get it done by the end of the beta, but I'll be doing it. I'll get it done at some point, whether I have to wait for release or not. But I have so many fun ideas. Like, that's the great thing about this game is as you're doing stuff, like the inspiration from this idea came from making my last crazy coaster. Then making this coaster, I get inspiration for another new coaster. And then when I'm going to make that coaster, I'm going to get inspiration for another new coaster. And then eventually, I'm just going to make like the ultimate coasters that do a little bit of everything. So yeah, I just made a big hit mountain there. I don't want this coaster to just be navigating boring terrain, so I roughed up the terrain a little bit. I wanted to do the ball over here because we had the jet ski on the other side, and so it was like water when it goes around the one half, and then when it goes around this half, it's going to be going through like ball terrain, off-roading, and that way you get like two different experiences. So you get to actually see that a little bit better here than my actual final presentation because things got kind of screwed up along the way. So yeah, first ramp is looking good. And we're testing this again because we want to make sure that the third time around that we have the timing right so that we can watch that craziness again. So yeah, this was the original intention, was to make sure we had a boat skipper and boat ride on one side of the park, ball ride on the other side of the park. And it worked in the early stages, the prototype stages and the early development stages. It was really nice. Unfortunately, when you accidentally delete your water, in order to get the boat back, you would have to actually delete all of the track and redo it on top of the new water. When you put the water in after, the game doesn't know that there's water there, so you have to like delete all of your track and redo it. And I was just not willing to do that because it could screw up the timing of everything. So, you know, I had the timing perfect. Why ruin a good thing? So here is where I went straight in, and it was like way too early. Just super, yeah, it was just way too early. And that's why I built that whole back area with the big giant rock there, because I knew in the off chance that I needed to buy myself some time, which I obviously did, and I knew I was probably going to need to, but I ran it straight through to the canyon just to see, and I figured I'll just run it around this big giant crater thing to see, you know, to buy myself some time. But the nice thing is you can just set it up beforehand, delete the track in between, and then reconnect it after. And that's where the game is actually pretty intuitive. You can just kind of break things apart and reconnect them later. Looks like my game froze or crashed. No, it just froze. Does that time to time. But I'm actually really surprised at how few times, like I said at the top of the video, I think I tested the coaster 8 times in the 5 hours before I got it like absolutely perfect. And that's super surprising to me because when you're trying to synchronize to an event that's doesn't even have a synchronized feature, you just have to basically cross your fingers and hope it all times out. To have this time out the way I got it, like I'm gonna run it around here and see how close I am. I'm like, wow, I'm really close. All I have to do is like shorten this track a little bit, or you know, increase the length of this track. And here we go for this test. I was like, okay, so if we bring it all the way around this giant rock here, how close to the timing are we gonna be? And to my surprise, we're actually really close. This is just a guesstimate going, how much track do I think I'm going to need? Let's put this much in. And this is something that you could have ended up testing like dozens upon dozens of times. So it's starting to lag now. That means we're just a little bit too early. And that's fine. That means all I have to do is stretch out my track a little bit. So the initial area, I thought it could be a little bit more interesting coming through the cave. Figure we could do like a giant upward sideways bank into the cave. And then we fix up this little bit here. while I was down here, I was like, you know what? I might as well clean this little area up because I know I'm on track to getting this done properly and I'm not going to have to change any of this starting track. So I wanted to make like this little muddy bog. I painted it all, and then I used some interesting rock paint and just went through there and painted that. And then I knew I had to stretch out this coaster just a little bit longer because it was just arriving too early. So why don't we pull it up to the back walls, hug those walls, do giant outward banks or inward banks, and just try to run it along the outside so that we get this nice, cool, kind of like pulling you along the sides of the mountain. And I really have no idea at this point how much I need to pull it out, right? And it's all just a guesstimate again. Tweaking, fiddling, trying to get that coaster to not only look good, but kind of smooth and flowy. But yeah, that's looking pretty good there, and I have no idea if it's going to get there on time. So this is probably one of my final test runs here, where I want to see how close we get it. And I gotta say again, the mossy track, I love that. I wish that was a feature where you could just paint the coaster, because for whatever reason, when you're painting terrain, it paints the coaster. That should just be a feature in the game. Like, if it's a bug, but it's like a bug that should be a feature. There should be like a toggle button that saves that, right? Like paint, because then I could paint whatever I want on the coaster. I could make it blend in with the environment. It actually like really looks nice too, especially like when you get the rock texture on there going through the Rocky Mountains, or you get the grass texture going through the grass. Sure, you can color the coaster track, but I don't know if you can color it segment by segment like you can in Planet Coaster. It's just the whole coaster. So I haven't really messed around with the painting of the coaster too much, and I didn't really care to either. I just leave it blue. It's fine. So here we go. We got the ball mode going down through here, hitting the jump, and let's see how close. All of this banking that we added to the canyon, it's pretty smooth. I got it pretty good. The banking's not bad. There's a couple hitches here and there, but, you know, I can't really complain. The whole aspect of this coaster was to get the motocross canyon jump right. So the other parts I'm not too worried about, like if it's the best coaster experience or not, but I did want it to be pretty good. So as you can see from that test run, we're getting there just a little bit late now. So obviously I brought things out too much, so now I know, okay, I got to bring this in. So some of my sweeping banking turns, I got to bring them in just a little bit closer, and not by much either. It's really just a guessing game from here. You got to guess and test, and if you overdo it, then you got to go back and redo it. And then if you underdo it, you got to go back and redo it. Like again, I'm super surprised at how quickly and easily my guesstimates were. It's just a really good guessing game on my part, and yeah, it's pretty much it. I think this is going to be the final test run, and then the whole coaster is basically complete in terms of the synchronization part. So once I had the 3 synchronized jumps, I didn't want to go to 4. I didn't want to go to 5, especially because sometimes it crashes. Generally, it felt like after the 3rd run, it would crash. So I knew I had to bring this coaster back into the station. And just get it over with. So ideally, it would have been good to get this coaster back into the station before these things started going on their 4th jump. That didn't end up being the case. The coaster comes in a little early, and it seems like when these coasters jump on their 4th go, it tends to crash the game. So I tend to get really lucky on all aspects of this creation, because if I had any more coasters or any more launchers or any more splitters, everything breaks loose and crashes. I had the right amount, and I decided to do 3 laps just for the sake of it, because I could go to the left side and then I could go to the right side, and we start in the middle. So we get 2 different experiences, and we go to both sides of the park for a total of 3 canyon jumps. If I would have went for 4 or 5, it would have also just given me problems. So I seem to have stopped myself at all of the breaking all the game's breaking points and all the game's limits unintentionally. Just kind of playing it by ear, thinking that, okay, that seems good enough, that seems good enough. But good enough was actually basically the breaking point. And, you know, part of me wanted to keep going and keep going crazier, but I knew this was a beta, and I knew I've seen bugs with this game already, and I knew if I overplanned and just ran into issues, I just wouldn't end up with anything at all. So I did go into this with some reservations about, you know, figuring that something's gonna break along the way. So let's go crazy, but like let's not go too let's not go let's game it out crazy like Josh would. I love that guy's videos, by the way. Oh my god, he's definitely an inspiration to me. But I've always been like that myself with games, always trying to break them, always trying to do that stuff. And I love editors as well. I did this kind of stuff back in like the Far Cry 1 had an editor. I think that was one of my earliest. I definitely made maps in Unreal, like Unreal Tournament, that sort of thing. But any first-person shooter, any game, I think there was a level editor for time travelers, time warpers, time travelers, friend. What was the system? GameCube? Yeah, I think it was called Time Travelers, Time Splitters. Anyways, all the map editors that have ever existed in all the games for all the consoles, and even some of the early PC games, I managed to get my hands on over the years and make kind of ridiculous stuff. I remember making like Mario Go-Kart circuits out of Far Cry maps, and people loved it. So this is kind of my jam. I love doing this like crazy, ridiculous stuff. And Planet Coaster didn't let you do that. And that's where, to me, this game is the impossification of this game. The terrain is going a little bit too fast. My apologies for this. Well, at least we built the mountain and painted it really quickly. But yeah, that is a lesson for me to learn for the future, that maybe 20 times speed is a little bit too bonkers for terrain painting. Maybe 10 or 15 would have been just fine. But yeah, what I was saying is the impossification factor allows me to just mess around and have fun and see what I can do. Whereas in Planet Coaster, you can't really do that without people like making fun of you. You have to be a little bit more modest and realistic. And even if you made like a ridiculously silly coaster in Planet Coaster, it doesn't have that impact, that kind of that zaniness. So I've always kind of like, I mean, one of my first coasters in Planet Coaster was Yeti Land, and it was a giant exploration around gigantic Yetis, and it had like an army of Yetis everywhere. It was kind of ridiculous. So I even though Planet Coaster wasn't intended, I tried to impossify Planet Coaster. That's like the first thing I tried to do. I just found that it wasn't as easy to do. So this game has been a bit of a joy in that sense, and I can't wait to see what other modules and things we have on release. It's gonna be really fun. So, you know, I want to see what other ideas I can get, and I want to hear your guys' ideas. You know, did you try this? Or, you know, I had the wave race idea. We shot coasters over canyons. I made the most broken physics-defying coaster ever made in my first one. What else can we do? As of right now, we have the splitter, we have the ramp, we have the cannon, we have the balls, we have the water thing, and I think that's all we have. And we have the transport, like the double stations, and that's pretty much all we have for the beta currently. But we don't really know what modules we're gonna have on launch. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on what you would like to see with the modules currently. And if you're watching this video by the time the game comes out, maybe you're aware of some of the other modules and you can throw some ideas down in the comments for me. But I'm open to taking people's ideas and getting inspired by them. And did you think of this? Did you try that? Let's go for it. The more crazy stuff we can make, the more fun we can have, and make a fun little series out of it. So as you can see there, we're getting the coaster all the way back to the station, and that is our final test run. The coaster is complete. We managed to get it all done. And there you guys have it. We have a bunch of coasters, technically hundreds. There's 50 exactly that jump 3 times across a giant cannon, with one that near misses going through all of it as our main attraction. So a bit of a crazy process. I had a little bit of fun doing the terraforming. I had a little bit of fun playing with the sandbox mode. A lot of terrain editing, and then going Impossify. The only thing I wish that this game had, and if the developers ever see this, please add in a dual synchronized feature, because I would love to let this open to the guests. It would have been so much better to watch this with the guests on the coasters, but then they screw up all the synchronizations, and all the coasters are going to be going over the canyon at different times because the load unload times are going to stagger everything. But if there's a forced synchronicity on the coaster options, all the coasters will wait to leave at the same time, and then boom, you're good to go. So all I have to do is check that checkbox, and then I could have hooked them all up so all the guests went in, all the coasters would load up. It would wait until all 5 are, half loaded, full loaded, whatever, but ready to leave. Then they would all leave together, and it would be the exact same thing as how I was testing it. How I was testing it, I'd pause the game, hit test on all of them, and then I would unpause the game, and then they would all just basically start together. That's how I did it. So if I push one, like if I unpause the game or push the button the second too late, the whole thing would have been off. So that in of itself was a bit of a pain to get going on this little project, but we managed to make it work. I had a lot of fun with it. Like I said, it was only a 5-hour build. I thought something like this would have been a complete disaster and take me all day, and to my surprise, I kind of lucked out and we got it done. So really cool stuff. What did you guys think? Leave your comments down below. Did you guys like to see the let's build and the behind the scenes, the making of? Is that something that interests you in the future? If I make other coasters, would you like to see the setup and the build process for it again in the future? Because I'm already recording myself doing it. It's not that much extra work for me to then turn that into another video just to give you guys something to see, some behind the scenes. So I don't mind doing it as long as you guys enjoy it. And if it's something you're not that interested in, you just want to see the craziness, we'll just go straight to the craziness. Also, last thing I want to mention is if you make crazy coasters like this, you will be able to send me your save files or upload them to the workshop. I don't know how this game's going to work on release, but you'll definitely be able to send me your save files. So be sure to come join us on Discord and stuff. In the future, we're going to have like a submission thing, and I'll be checking out your crazy creations, giving my commentary on them. So something to look forward to in the future. That's going to do it for me in today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.